A United States Marine, honorably discharged in 1999, Dawn has a Bachelor's of Art degree from Framingham State University and completed her Master's in Library and Information Science with a concentration in Technology from Simmons University in 2023. Dawn started at the Framingham Public Library as a page in 2012. She served as head library technology from 2018 to 2022, where she led the research, evaluation, and implementation of emerging technologies, which included the adoption of browsing Wi-Fi hotspots and the circulation of Chromebooks for library patrons. In 2021, she was named Head of Branch Experience, where she served as liaison between the library and community organizations, fostering partnerships and promoting library services. As Assistant Library Director, Dawn managed the day-to-day operations of the library, including scheduling, payroll, working with the library trustees and numerous stakeholders and community partners. She has supervised and managed staff and worked on professional development opportunities. She was named Library Director in June of 2024. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Dellasanta.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning.
The library trustees wrote that. I didn't write it about myself. So first of all, thank you so much to the Brotherhood for inviting me here this morning, and to the rabbi. This is such a beautiful space. I don't think I've ever been in here, but I love it. It's so welcoming and wonderful. It's wonderful to see the mayor and the first lady here, of course, and 3 of our library trustees. It's nice to see Howie and, of course, Sandy. And so some other folks who I know, like Lois and Robin, librarian here. I'm very happy to be here this morning. I was going to tell you a little bit about myself, but I forgot I gave you that hour-long intro already, so I'll skip that. But okay, let me see where the computer's. Okay, good. So just to start out, a quick show of hands. Who in this room has a library card to any library? Wow. I guess I should have said who does. I saw one who doesn't. We'll talk after. Who has a library card in Framingham? Okay, you're on the list. And who uses the library? Excellent. This is a good. Annabelle, you don't have to put your hand up. You're a trustee. And who remembers the first time that they used the library? Any library? Oh, my daughter remembers. That's nice. That's right. And who can't remember when they got their first library card because it was so long ago? That's excellent. So we all have a shared memory in this room of a public library, maybe an academic library, even a special library as well. So I remember my first library. I grew up the first part of my life when I was very young in Hopkinton. I'm Gen X, so I was a latchkey kid. Does anybody know what that is? That means that I went to school in the morning with my house key on a red piece of yarn around my neck. And when I came home, there was nobody in the house. I lived in Grove Street, on Grove Street in Hopkinton, which I couldn't afford to do now, but that's okay. And I went to school at Center Elementary School in Framingham. And I would walk past the library every day and walk home after school. And I read this book called A House with a Clock in Its Walls. You may have heard of it. And it was very scary, by John Bellairs, who was a Massachusetts native. And I remember one afternoon coming home and standing on my front porch, and it was cold and it was dark. And I knew that if I opened that door and went in, nobody I knew would be home. But that house wasn't empty. So I turned around and I walked back down Grove Street, took a right, and went right into the Hopkinton Public Library. The Hopkinton Public Library at this time was warm. It had this red velvet seat right by the stairs that went up into the children's room. And I had my book, and I sat down on that velvet seat, and I can clearly remember the dampness inside the windows. The mayor can probably tell us there was a problem with that building, but it was so warm and so cozy, and the librarian was right at the circulation desk, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she didn't ask me why I was there, but she let me be there. And I went there every single day after school after that. And that's where I learned about pet cemeteries in Maine. And I learned about the black stallion and the tropic isles and shipwrecks and so many worlds that existed every afternoon in that library. I was a latchkey kid because my family was poor. My mom was a single mom, and we were the kind of poor where people would leave hampers of firewood and food on our front porch. I didn't have any brothers or sisters, so I was alone. But in that space, when I would come to the library maybe never knew my name. Maybe she did. But she knew who I was, and she expected me, and I could wait there till my mom picked me up. So, before I ever knew that one day I would grow up to be a librarian, I knew that the public library meant safety and access and a sense of community. So now, a little bit of history about the Framingham Public Library. Now, my story isn't unique. You probably all have your library stories, what the library meant to you, and I know that you do, because the people who work at the library with me right now all have their library stories too. But this is Samuel Boylston Adams. He was a Civil War surgeon, and he comes from Framingham. He went to the Civil War, and he did surgery for 3 days straight until he went blind from doing surgery, which I didn't know could happen, but it can. He came back, and they said, you can't be in the Civil War anymore. But he wasn't going to let that stop him. He went back down, and he fought in the Civil War as a regular soldier of some kind. And when he came back, this community was so important to him that he did two things. He started the Framingham Public Library, and he started Framingham Union Hospital. Which is interesting. We actually still have in our archives a ledger with some overdue library books and finds from him. So if you know, the Framingham Public Library, when it first began, had a collection of about 500 books, and it was in one rented room in the little strip of buildings where Mad Willie's is. It grew then, with the help of Mr. Adams, into the Memorial Library on Edgell, right, Edgell Memorial Library, right in Framingham Center on the Green. Later on, that library expanded. It came to the Memorial Building, and then it went to Central Street on the Round Building. There were branches all over the building, including one that was for Spanish speakers. In 1979, the main library, as it currently stands, was opened, and in 2016, the new Krista McAuliffe Branch Library on Water Street was open. And in 2019, on April 9th, which is actually the birthday of the Framingham Public Library, the library unveiled its beloved bookmobile we call Booker. It's not the first bookmobile that the library's had, but it's ours, and we love it very much. So I will say, in the Q&A portion afterwards, you can ask me about this. We have a portrait of Zabdiel Adams next to our circulation desk, and he does haunt the library. We can talk about that later. But I will say that you think about the idea of this man creating a library and also creating a hospital at the same time goes to tell you that the philosophy of libraries and human care has never been separate. That's going to come back later. Currently, our library is working on a long-range plan. Some of you might know that as a strategic plan. Does everybody in this room know what a long-range plan is by a show of hands? Okay. So you all know more than I did when I became library director. When I became the library director, we were coming into our last year of our outgoing long-range plan, which is where we are. And we're trying to figure out what type of goals to put in our next long-range plan. That's a whole bunch of goals. It's like 30 pages long. There's maybe 5 or 6 different specialties. And we're going to figure out how we can make the Framingham Public Library better for our community. And so what we do to figure that out is not look amongst ourselves, although there's lots of things that I would like to do. Like, I would like a library where I can just sit and read books all day under the steamy window with the snow falling, but the mayor probably wouldn't allow that. We can talk about that later. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to the community for some ideas. So far, we've had 2 public forums in which we've invited members of the community to come in and tell us what they think about the library now and what they would like for the library to be like. And we're also having conversations with stakeholders in the community. Everybody from our mayor to our unhoused community, seniors, veterans, children, teens, everybody that we can think of who has a unique perspective and an investment in the public library, because the library belongs to the community and to the people in the community. So it's important that we hear from everybody. And we've had amazing conversations so far. The school librarians have talked to us. We've figured out gaps in access that we can work on with the schools. We've figured out what, I would say, we have a good idea of where our goals are going to be. But one of the questions, and the reason why I am including this in our talk this morning, is because we asked a question of our forums, and the question was, with the library in mind, answer this question. I dream of a Framingham where? And we thought that this was a beautiful question because the answers were these. I dream of a Framingham where everyone feels included, valued, safe, and free to be who they are. I dream of a Framingham where no one is isolated or excluded. I dream of a Framingham where families from all walks of life are thriving and helping each other be their best selves. And I dream of a Framingham where there are vibrant spaces, indoors and out, where people connect, create, and belong. Does anyone want to say? You don't have to. Do you hear any themes that are coming out of those questions? You can just throw out a word. I'm going to write it down for the long-range plan. Community, I heard. Yes. Belonging, inclusion. Mm-hmm. That's what I heard too. I and the co-chair of the committee who are running the long-range plan, we heard safety, inclusion, community, and creativity. So for me, these were the same things that I wanted when I was a latchkey kid afraid to go in my house. And it was amazing to me because something happened that happens to me so often as a library director. I realized that we are more alike than we are different. So the library, if you go to a library in Framingham, you go to a library in New York, you go to a library in Florida, they're all going to be different, but what they should do is be representative of their specific community. And the members of their specific community should feel valued and safe and free to be who they are. Framingham is such a diverse community. We have over 70 languages spoken in our community and in our schools. We are fortunate to have, I don't know, off the top of my head, is it 7 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 2 high schools? We have Framingham State University. We have a community college. We have so many families. We have so many senior citizens. We have so many different cultures. We have people who are afraid of immigration laws. We have people of so many different faiths. And we have such a large geographic sprawl in our community that the idea of making sure that everyone who walks into the library sees themselves reflected and welcomed is almost a little bit overwhelming. But we're doing it. Now, I know all of you can go onto our website and look at our calendar of events and see what we have to offer. And you can come into our building and look at our materials and see what we have to offer. So I don't want to go through the list and bore you, but I did want to give you a little bit of an example of how we are meeting the needs of all of the people that I mentioned and didn't mention. I wanted to let you know that in our children's room, first of all, we have materials in 21 languages, and that's growing in response to the community. Because resources are precious and world language materials are even more expensive than materials in English, but we want to represent the people in our community. We have what's called a deposit collection with the Boston Public Library, and that means that the BPL gives us on a rotating basis materials to meet the needs of the community that we are in. So that might mean that you come in and see an ever-changing collection of materials in Portuguese or in Hindi or in Mandarin, and you come into our library. You might come in to our Literacy Unlimited program, because you're looking for a way to improve your English skills when you come to this country, or you're looking for a way to become a citizen, because we have classes on citizenship, and we help people learn English, and we help people become citizens, but we also make sure that they can go home with a book by Stephen King and learn about the Pet Cemetery in Maine in their own language. They don't have to read it in English. They can read it in the language that is native to them and is easy to them and makes them feel welcome and feel part of this community and feel like they were expected here and wanted here. You know, tariffs have affected our ability to purchase materials in other languages, but this sharing of resources that exists in Massachusetts that you should all know about has found a way for us to work around that, which is incredible. For the first time last year, we offered programming in people's native languages. We have story time in Mandarin. The first time we offered story time for children in Mandarin, well, no one tell the fire department, but we went over our capacity. So many people wanted that, and so many people were grateful for that. We offered for the first time Civics 101 classes with live translation in Spanish and Portuguese. We offered programming, and we offer programming every year to celebrate Brazilian Independence Day. This last year, you could count on one hand how many people came to that, how many members of the Brazilian community. There were people who were American citizens there, but people were afraid to come out. Our state representative, Priscilla Sousa, was there, and it was kind of a white elephant in the room that she addressed right away. She said to the public library, "Thank you for providing space. Even if members of this community couldn't come, you held space for us, and we'll be back." That's powerful. Even if you can't be there, the public library will represent you. This last year, we took this programming that we offer on the road, and we brought bachata into the community with Bachata in the Parks. It's a partnership with the Parks and Rec Department. We brought teachers from the Dominican Republic who also taught about their culture before they taught you how to dance. Ruth, I know, particularly loved that program. We also celebrate Pride. We represent our members from our LGBTQIA+ community. We want people to come into the library and know that it's a safe place for everybody. By safe, that means it's not necessarily, it's not that libraries don't have opinions. We're very passionate about people's rights. We're very passionate about intellectual freedom. But we want you to walk in and not feel the tension of any of that passion. You come in and it feels like a neutral, safe space where nobody was, where you don't have to worry about who you are or where you come from. We also celebrate our veterans. Every month I see there's an Army veteran in here, at least one, maybe two. I can't see that far. What is on your hat? Army 2 Army? Okay. Thank you. Once a month at the McAuliffe Ranch, we have a veterans coffee for all veterans are welcome. Everybody's welcome because everybody's welcome to every program in the library. But we have that. I don't think I've seen either one of there, but maybe. We also are a cooling center in the summertime when the temperatures are hot, and we're a warming place in the wintertime. Right now at the library, in our quiet spaces, you'll see that there are a lot of people who come in to get warm. That's because sometimes the shelters in Framingham get full, and people have to leave the shelters at about 9 o'clock, and they come to the library to stay warm. And when they're there, oftentimes they'll pick up some materials and they'll read them. The library offers, I mentioned that we have Literacy Unlimited, and we offer Paths to Citizenship. We also offer job support. We offer free resume writing help, and we help people find jobs. We have free Wi-Fi, we've got computers. We try to create pathways for everybody in our specific community to be successful in life and to reach fulfillment. So in other words, it doesn't matter who you are or what you have, because Framingham Public Library is your library. We recently opened a free food pantry in our library. You may have heard about this. There was a Girl Scout who had experienced food insecurity as a child, and for her Gold Award project, she built out of some cabinets that she found on the road a pantry where people could come in and donate some food or some toiletries, and people who needed them could come in and pick them up. This has been wildly successful. We have this in an area where it's discreet, but public enough for us to monitor it. You don't know if someone's dropping off or picking up, but there's always somebody there. We also have a freezer where people can come in and get some meals for their family or for themselves. Also successful, that comes from Daniel's Table. The thing about Framingham is there are so many grassroots organizations that exist to help people in our community, but there hasn't always been a centralized place for people to access those resources. For us, it makes sense for the library to be that place because oftentimes people find themselves in the library. So that's what I mean by safety. Safety means something different for everybody. For me, it meant protect me from the thing in the walls. But for our community, that means warmth. It means community. But it's not all we do. The public library is also responsible for safeguarding knowledge. Libraries have always been about safeguarding knowledge, from the very first libraries in Mesopotamia that stored stone tablets that reported transactions. We've always been that central location for the things that you may need to know. For us, some of you know this, some of you don't, we are the sole repository for the Metro West Daily News in all of its incarnations, back to the late 1800s. We have every copy of that newspaper. And we're the only people on the planet that do. Even Metro West Daily News doesn't have their own archives. We keep all of these on microfilm. And microfilm doesn't last forever. Some of it is crumbling, but we are in the process of working towards digitizing these collections so that people can have them forever. We are working on a new project right now called the Framingham Room. The Framingham Room isn't actually a new project, it's an old project, and it includes a space that holds all of our newspaper clippings, photos, papers, and artifacts. Artifacts like fire grenades that were used at the original Frank Edgell Memorial Library. I don't know if any of you know what a fire grenade is, but it's a beautiful blue glass bottle filled with the most toxic substance in the world that people would throw at fires to put them out. These were never used. They're actually in my office right now because we don't have a good place to store them. And, you know, I was just told not to touch the inside of them. We also have a collection of glass slides and books from an artist called Wallace Nutting, who made furniture. We're the only, aside from the Library of Congress, the only library in the world to have this collection of Wallace Nutting materials. We collect city minutes from every division in the city, and we hold them in paper for 7 years. So that means that if you miss something at a city council meeting, that's okay. You can come in, or any meeting. It could be cemeteries or whatever it is. You want to know what happened, you can come to the library and you can sit down and read those minutes. We keep all of the yearbooks from the Framingham libraries. Those are digitized, so you can go online and look up what you used to look like, or what someone sitting next to you used to look like back in the day. That's fun. We do it all the time. We also preserve seeds. Did you know that? We have a seed lending library, and we have heirloom seeds from farms in Framingham that we keep so you can make the same tomatoes that Hanson's been making forever. I mean, if you can. I can't. I've tried. So we hang on to the city's memories. The public library also fosters growth and resilience. So we preserve the knowledge and we share it. I want to tell you a little bit about some of our incredible programs that we have at the library. One of those is lifelong learning with Framingham State University. Adventures in lifelong learning specifically. Have any of you partaken? Yes, of course you have. Of course you have. That's amazing. So we offer Stimulating free courses in diverse subjects like art and history and science and political science. Many of you know Professor Smales. Professor Smales, actually, we just received a donation in the mail from somebody who wanted to help us continue that program because they were so impressed with Professor Smales. We foster intellectual connection and community engagement with peers, extending education beyond traditional degrees and interpersonal enrichment and exploration. We also have the Homework Center after school. The Homework Center is a free, supportive after-school space for students in K through 12, providing homework help from tutors, quiet study areas, and snacks at both the main library and the McAuliffe branch Monday through Thursday so that we can help with academic success in a nurturing learning environment. We recently were the recipient of a grant from Libraries Without Borders, which is an organization that will come in and do a study in our community to see where our gaps in service to children are and help to close those gaps with us. They spend a year with us identifying those, working with teachers and working with librarians to form partnerships that will continue to support kids. And one of the things that we're looking at for the upcoming years is help with SAT testing. I know many people are concerned with reading scores in particular of students, so we hope to be able to alleviate that. It's one of the ways that the library is looking to fill gaps. We also have the Literacy Unlimited program that I mentioned before, which is a free volunteer-run program at the library. It offers one-on-one tutoring and conversation groups for adults in English or in other languages. This is one of the most incredible, vibrant programs at the library. You can come in any time of day and see tutors working with students in many of our little study areas. And I want to tell you briefly about a story that just illustrates how incredible this program is. So we have, I think, 160 tutors who are working with students. They're always busy. These are people who are volunteering their time in the day to come out and help people learn how to speak English. We have a staff member at our library. Her name is Li Hua. And when she came to this country, she didn't speak any English. She's from China. And she came to our literacy department and asked for a tutor, and the tutor helped her learn how to speak basic English. She moved up into intermediate, and then she moved into advanced English, and then she became a tutor, and she started helping other people who spoke Chinese learn how to speak English. She was so good at it that Literacy Unlimited hired her to be an administrative assistant. So she started matching up other students with tutors. And then she went back to China with her husband for a little while. And then disaster struck and she lost her husband. She found herself a widow, and she came back to the library and applied for a position as a substitute librarian. And of course, we accepted her with open arms. And a few years later, she's been promoted twice, and now she is a full-time circulation librarian at the library. And I just think that that's right there, the most incredible example of what you can do, what doors the library opens for you. The other day, one of our library trustees, who isn't here this morning, her name is Jan, she volunteers in the Literacy Unlimited department, and she works with a man from China who is trying to work in America. And we introduced him to Liwa, and she did her magic that she did before and said, well, this is what you need to do. These are the steps you need to take. After you leave the library, you'll go to library, and so on and so forth. And these are the things that as a director you see throughout the day, and they just take your breath away, because it's not the huge things that happen, although those are just as important. I know all of you know that the libraries in America were at risk of losing funding. They did lose funding for a little while over the summer. And then that funding was reinstated. And that's because of people like trustees and legislators calling and making noise and advocating for us. And that's amazing. But then also those small amazing things, like with Liwa reaching out her hand and saying, welcome, I was you a few years ago, and this is what you need to do to succeed, is breathtaking, and that happens every single day in some way at the library, whether it's somebody who's now able to access food because they've got a meal. They know they can come in and get warm. They know the next step is they can read this book in Portuguese that they found. And now they feel welcome enough to go and talk to this librarian, and everything has changed for them. That's what happened to me, and that's what, I mean, not the languages, but you know what I'm telling you, I had to stay somewhere after school so that I wouldn't get eaten. And that's happening to people every single day in this community, in your library. I love the library, if you can't tell. Okay, that was the tangent. We also offer Mango Languages, which is an award-winning self-paced platform offering over 70 world languages, so all of you can learn new languages too on your own. And maybe you didn't know this, but we offer databases. If you know me, you've heard me talk about databases because over the summer, when we lost funding for a little while, we lost access to our databases temporarily. And so we have any of you heard of Gale databases before? Gale databases are the databases that all of the students use in order to learn how to write peer-reviewed papers or papers using peer-reviewed research. They're the databases that the students at the universities use at Mass Bay and at Framingham State. And over the summer, they were defunded. But when that happened, our Veterans Council, they use our library boardroom for their meetings. And one afternoon they came in and I just found out that we were losing access to databases, and I was sad. I usually make coffee for them, but I was so sad I forgot to make the coffee. And they said, "What's the matter?" And I told them, and they said, "How much money do you need?" And I was like, "Millions." And they said, "We can't do that, but if you can pick one thing for us to help you with, we'll do it." And I said, "How about the databases?" And so they wrote us a check for the databases. They and the friends supplemented what we had lost. So we were able to keep our databases live. But what was even better than that is in this magnanimous moment, our vendor said, yes, when we said, "Could you just allow us to provide access to the schools as well so that the students don't lose access to these databases?" So this year, this fiscal year, the veterans and the friends have continued access to databases that get tens of thousands of hits by young people in this community. But we also offer other databases like O'Reilly Learning, which is a comprehensive online learning platform with a vast array of technological and business resources. It's actually access to over 50,000 ebooks, 30,000 hours of live video, live training, and interactive labs that help people learn how to do things that make themselves more marketable in the workforce. So all that is to say that learning should not be dependent upon what you can afford. So we're back to these words again: safety, inclusion, creativity, and connection. Libraries put a human face on public systems. Susan's daughter, Isabella, gave me a statistic that she formulated using complicated math I couldn't understand, but it equaled 1 in 3 members of the Framingham community uses the Framingham Public Library. Obviously, there's more in this room. The statistics are heavy here. But these are the ways, some of the ways that I've just described to you, along with all the books that you see. These are the ways that your public library is serving the community every day. Just real quick, this is our new logo, if you haven't seen it. You may have been used to the old tree, which we almost got rid of because we were looking for a rebrand. We were tired of yellow and brown being our colors, and we wanted to bring in some colors that were more in alignment with McAuliffe and the bookmobile. And we almost wanted to trade the tree out for maybe a turtle, because you may have heard that we have a world famous turtle that lives in the children's room named Fred, who has pen pals all over the country. Other library pets like lizards write to her. I don't know how it works, but it's library magic. And we, in working towards bringing the Framingham room back into the library, it's right now, piecemeal all over the place. One of our archivists found a newspaper clipping about the Edgell Memorial Library. And one day, maybe you know this, there used to be great big elm trees around that park. And one day there were some children in the park enjoying some nice weather, and a big gust of wind came and blew over the biggest elm tree. Framingham's famous for elm trees. We found this out in our archives too. There's like a world famous elm tree. You can all do research on this as well once the Framingham room is back. And this tree fell over and sent an entire classroom full of school children running into the Edgell Memorial Library for safety. And when our archivist found this, we realized that we couldn't possibly take the tree out of the logo because, it's representative of safety. We're also working on a new slogan, and we thought it would be Stories Start Here, but recently we've noticed that Access Framingham also has a new slogan, and that's it. So we'll have to revisit it. But I wanted to sort of wrap things up a little bit by telling you something you might not know. Librarians are actually frontline workers, especially in a community like Framingham. And what I mean by that is librarians often are called upon to intervene in medical emergencies, mental health crises, life crises. Every one of us is trained in Narcan, AED, some basic CPR, and stop the bleed techniques. Every librarian is a shade tree social worker, and I can almost guarantee that someday, soon, Simmons will be offering a dual master's program in social work and librarianship. We don't receive training in those things because we are looking forward to dealing with those things. We receive training in intervening in crises because we've all intervened in crises. Being frontline staff and developing those skills necessary that you didn't go to library school thinking you would need can sometimes take a toll on your mental health. And so one of the things that our library and many libraries across the country right now are doing is looking for help from social workers. This year, we found a way to have a social worker in our library. We became part of a program with Boston University. This is we took a social work intern from them. We received a placement. We are only the second community in Massachusetts to have a social work intern given to us by Boston University. Boston Public Library piloted this program, but this is something that if you listen to any news on libraries, you will hear over and over again. Something that's going on. It's very new, but it's very important. Our social worker is there to help with our staff, of course, when something happens and staff needs some. We call them debriefs after an incident, whether that might be somebody who's in a crisis, who's now shared their crisis with the librarian, or after one of our librarians has to go into the bathroom and administer Narcan, or when somebody has any other kind of medical emergency. Librarians didn't expect to have to deal with that sort of thing, but they do it because they're public librarians, and this is what happens in the public library sometimes. But our social worker also is there to compile and provide resources for our community members. And that's what our social worker right now has been doing. They have office hours at the library, and people come in and they'll help them, figure out how to navigate SNAP, for example. I want to tell you a story that kind of sums up the amazing work that our social work intern has done. And that is, there was a community, a family in our community, a woman who was a single mother, and she had 2 children, both of whom had developmental disabilities, and she had rats in her house. And she was looking for help. She came to the library and asked our social worker intern what she could do. How could she get on a list to find a different house to live in? And our social work intern, who has spent the last few months reaching out to all of the grassroots organizations in our community, like SMOC and like the Living Room and like Metro West Legal Services, not necessarily grassroots, but kind of disparate, then figured out a multifold approach to this problem. One, she did get Metro West Legal Services on board and ready to intervene. Oh, because I forgot to tell you one critical piece of information. The landlord to this woman, the landlord for this woman, tried to mitigate the rat problem with rat poison all around the apartment. And so our social work intern was able to reach out to her cohort of social workers in this community. And this is social workers from the health department, from the school department, from the police department, and from Metro West Care Connection, which is an incredible organization in Framingham, and was able to piece together a plan, and within 7 days had this family in a new apartment. And if anybody knows how long housing waiting lists are, you know that that was probably a miracle. And the reason why that was able to happen is because there was one person at this library who had the ability to reach out to different organizations. Because in a community, people always gravitate towards the library, whether they're afraid to go in their house after school, whether they need a warm place to go, whether they need a new James Patterson book, because we have all of them, or the internet, or they come to a lecture, or they come to a dance class. All people gravitate towards the library, and so the library is a natural place for these services to be offered. And before we go into the Q&A, I just want to tell you that we will continue to keep all of the books that we have and all of the digital materials. We will continue to fight for access and intellectual freedom, and we will continue to offer all the programming that we offer. We'll continue to drive the bookmobile all over the community, and we will continue to serve all of the members of our community and look out for their needs and do our very best to meet them. And all the public libraries in America will be doing the same thing. So now I would like to know if you have any questions.
Thank you for coming. Just a question on the seed sharing or whatever it's referred to. How exactly does that work?
That's a great question. We have, somebody over here remembered card catalogs. When the card catalogs went defunct, we had an artist paint one to look beautiful. It's purple and green and has all kinds of vegetables on it. And then we went around and collected seeds. Like I said, we have heirloom seeds from Hanson's farm. And we actually have three seed lending libraries. One at the main library, one at the branch, and then a little bitty card catalog full of seeds on the bookmobile. So you come in, you pick what you want to grow, you grow it, and then once you've harvested that thing, you save the seeds and bring them back, and then somebody can take them next year.
Growing up, libraries were libraries, period. And I understand how they changed. I mean, my daughter-in-law is a librarian in Maryland, a children's librarian. My daughter, they both actually met at the Maryland College, School of Information Science, and my daughter was a librarian. But the point is, when did they shift to the social service aspect of it versus just lending books, and providing that pop culture and whatever?
I think that's a great question. And I would say sometime after stone tablets stopped being used. There was, again, each community is different. So a lot of us have memories of libraries that were just books. The Hopkinton Public Library is small, where I started, but that library might not have known that it was providing after-school care for me, but it was. And similarly, in I guess the late 1800s, libraries kind of ventured into settlement house areas where there were a lot of librarians, particularly around Chicago, who were connecting people, immigrants, with social services, and libraries became places where people could do what they're doing now, learn trades, learn how, a lot of libraries now have maker spaces. We have one called Spark Lab. I don't know who that is. Maybe it's Zap. I told you he haunts the area. And so librarians have always tried to find ways to connect their communities with their community needs. So I would say that it's fortunate to be able to look at a library and just think about books. But they've always been about more.
So right out of the gate, I wanted to know, has anyone called the library looking to be in a book that they don't like?
Great question. Yes. So we are fortunate to live in a state that, first of all, we're fortunate to live in a city that loves its library very much. And we're fortunate to live in a state that's very supportive of libraries, very pro-library state we live in. That being said, we have had two challenges, one formal challenge and one informal challenge. Both of them were thoughtful, and we have a process. So if you would like us to reconsider material that we've purchased, you can go to our website and fill out a form, and we have a process that we go through. We will find, I want you to know that if you do this, we're not going to take it off the shelf right away. We're going to leave it there and continue to keep, make it available, because librarians are value access and equal access, more importantly, above almost everything else. Which is why I say we try to appear neutral, but we aren't. And we do appear neutral. But in our hearts, we're little warriors. The challenges that we've had, we have a process where we thoughtfully think about this. We think, well, there's a set of standards that we have. Is the material outdated? For example, is it no longer considered to be true? Is there a value to the community historically in keeping this? And so we go through, we have a collection development librarian, and in tandem with that librarian, we go through and consider what the person who has requested us to reconsider was getting at. And then we evaluate that and make a determination. And if people don't like our determination, we have a board of trustees, so it can always be brought right up the chain of command. But for our two challenges, the informal one, we disagreed, and we kept the material in the collection, although we did move its location. The second challenge that we received, we agreed with the person who made the complaint, and we removed the material from our collection. That's a great question, and it's obviously you pay attention to libraries and news, because it's something that libraries and librarians are fighting, with some librarians even losing their jobs over materials in their collection, which is terrible. The reason why we keep materials in our collection is because the community asked for it. Everything that we have is based on complicated evaluation methods, many of which are just requests. But they're all based on our community.
If you had to move ahead 5 years from now, what do you think the influence of artificial intelligence will be doing to your library? Oh no, I'm sorry I asked such a hard question.
It's not, no, it's a great question. It's a question we all have, because we're all becoming dumber by the second. We're probably still going to be doing battle. I mean, there are ways to use AI for good, of course. But then there are ways that we're all getting suckered by it as well. And I think that we'll continue to battle AI 5 years from now. Although maybe not, because I just heard a report that it used more water in the last year than every single water on the surface. Thank you for that great question, and very relevant question.
Thank you, Don, for a superb overview of what our library is and does. Thank you all for your interest in the library. I just wanted to mention that the project to create the Framingham room is a project sponsored by another arm of the library, and that would be the Framingham Public Library Foundation, which is currently looking for donations for this project.
And members, right?
And members. Good point. The foundation is a board that provides funding for capital projects that supplement what comes from the city and the state. And if you're interested in talking to me about this board, we are looking for 2 new members.
Thank you, Ruth. The Framingham Public Library Foundation is some of the projects that they just now brought us 2 new big bookshelves because our teen room ran out of space. You might not know this, but one of the things that the public schools in Framingham are doing now is requiring their students, they only have to go to library in elementary school. Once they get to middle school, they don't have to anymore. But now in high school, the teachers in the humanities and history and English departments are requiring their students to read independently. So they're using the libraries more. And in addition to having like one of the largest manga collections in the network, we also have expanded our teen collection thanks to the foundation, who also helped sponsor the new teen room, the Krista McAuliffe Branch Library, the Bookmobile, the Costin Room, and so many other big capital projects. This Framingham Room project, I think, is going to be incredible.
This is kind of a tough question in some ways, and I don't expect you to really have a good answer, so up front. Our community, along with many other communities you mentioned, are the targets of very, very dangerous disinformation that has literally led to deaths around the world. And which could happen in this town as well. With the library's role of safeguarding information, providing a community space, how are you envisioning the library's role in undoing or preventing the damage of this, or combating this kind of dangerous disinformation without trampling on, of course, the important principles of free speech, free and access that all libraries necessarily are built upon?
That's a wonderful question. We, in our lifelong learning, Adventures in Lifelong Learning, one of the, it may just be a regular program. I'm forgetting right now. I've only had 3 cups of coffee. But we have offered a lecture in critically thinking and looking for ways to separate misinformation from information. One of the things that you learn in library school is to consider your source, right? And trace things back to source material. Another reason why databases with peer-reviewed materials are so important. So one of the things that you're absolutely right that needs to be done is the careful, thoughtful, calm navigation of information back to its source. And I think that's one of the, like AI is going to be something that isn't,
Nelson, don't walk in front of me.
like anything else, made up by the big movements. It's the day-to-day practices, the habits of thoughtful consideration of things. The library is also public spaces. Our library is a public building, but inside our public buildings we have community spaces that are considered to be limited public forums. Those are protected under the First Amendment. So anybody can have any kind of program that they want to have and come in and present. That's great, and that's what our democracy is built upon. But it also does leave room for people to say their own agendas. We have had people come into our libraries and use them for all kinds of reasons. The one thing it wasn't in Framingham, but there was a neo-Nazi group in Worcester when Mark Contois, who used to be the director of the Framingham Library, was the director of the Worcester Library. He had this organization want to come in, and your natural reaction is to, first of all, be like, of course not, because that's horrible. And then your librarianship says protecting the First Amendment rights of everybody has to win out in that case. So he called the police and said this is going to be a mess. It was. But he had to let it go on. And so I think that I mention that because we are all in danger of letting in this case, naturally important opinions to prevail. But even in smaller things, like whether or not you believe AI should be in a library, or whether or not you believe social services should be in a library, your opinion can't always be the thing that dictates. You have to be sober and thoughtful and calm in your decision making and distillation of information. And that's what librarians are trained to do. Does that somewhat answer that question? Yeah, a long way. Probably doesn't have an answer. It's just something that we have to, and we're always going to know. We don't always know what we don't know, too. So sometimes, history has to wait for answers to come.
Thank you so much for coming. It was wonderful to learn all about the library.
Thank you.
I have a question about the Adventures in Learning program. A number of years ago, a number of us had attended the classes. We loved it. Then came COVID, and it was all on Zoom. And I tried on Zoom. It just doesn't have the same feel to it. Professor Snail's phenomenal. We learned about movies, and that was at the library, and we had lunch at the library, and it became a whole community activity. And I was just wondering, is it a cost factor? You still have the same teachers, but what made it remain as a Zoom activity?
It's a great question. We tried to bring them back in person and nobody showed up. Is the answer. 130 people will come on Zoom and nobody will come in person.
Yeah.
We would love to go back. That was a great day when Adventures would be in the library, and it would go on all day, and then we would set up the tables just like this, and people would come sit around the tables, and the libraries of yesterday used to be quiet, but we love to have excitement in the library, and we tried it, no one came. The first year after COVID, people still were not as excited about coming back into public, but we only went strictly back to Zoom like last year, just because we were offering them in public or in person, but nobody was coming. So we would actually recruit staff to go sit in there so that the presenter didn't feel bad.
So back in the 60s, when I was a kid, there was a library at City Hall. The entryway right across from the Cobbler and Charles Panza.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So there was a library there too. Just some information to give out.
Oh, there were 6 branches at one time.
Wow.
I'd love for us to have 6 branches again, Mr. Mayor. But, it's interesting to me when we've been digging up this history to learn that so many years ago there was a Spanish library. Like Framingham was so forward-thinking and inclusive so many years ago. That's incredible to me. And this is 1855 with 500 books and still going strong 170 years later speaks a lot for this community. And in-person programming, I just wanted to circle back real quick. I don't know if any of you in here were able to attend. Ruth did. The library this year, we were selected to be one of the 20 or so libraries that Yo-Yo Ma simulcast his concert to. But we opened up this concert. We opened up the library for this concert at 7, and it went till midnight. That's 6 hours of cello, which should come with an award. That's a lot of cello. But that room was packed at midnight. We were the midnight library. So people will come out. And if you start a riot for this, Adventures in Lifelong Learning, we'll do it. We do whatever the community, whatever we can that our community requests, that's our job. So if enough people want to have something in public, back in person, we'll do it.
When you started, after the pandemic, when they were opening up again, the people who were doing that were told, I was told, because I went to them and said, what about having it in person? no, we're not gonna do that.
Oh.
And that's why she said, well, I don't know who you reached out to say you were doing it and people didn't come. But if you're reaching out to just people who have computers and who have been doing the Zoom, they're happy doing Zoom.
Yeah.
You have to reach out to the people who used to go years ago and didn't even know. I didn't even know you had an in-person class.
That's a shame. It is in our newsletter, which is on paper. But that being said, we would love to know where to bring this information to. And that's something that can be really helpful with. Like, tell us where to deliver this information and we will do it gladly. And if there is enough interest in those in person, again, I'm sorry that somebody told you, point blank, we're not doing that anymore
They
because,
were adamant.
yeah.
When I asked several times, several years in a row, to speak to the people from the college and from the library. We're not doing that. Here. And it was really very disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see where it would be. I mean, that was a fun time that we used to have.
It was fantastic to be allowed because it got seniors away from their houses,
Yes.
out doing and meeting other people and doing things together. And that's one thing that people need for their mental health.
Exactly. Yes, because there's an epidemic of loneliness right now, and that's one of the ways that people can come together, enrich their minds, enrich their souls. And Annabelle's husband, Bob, told me that well, he says we're the only library in America that has a collaborative mission with the university like that.
It is.
So I say, I mean, if you want to revive adventures in person, like, let's do it. I mean, you've got to tell us. You've got to send us a bunch of emails. Everybody who wants to do it, just send us an email.
I've had concerns recently about the increase of anti-Semitism, and it's really terrifying me. And I don't know if the library or what anybody else can do about it. I think it's something to think about anyways.
It is, and Annabelle, you've also had concerns about immigrants in our community as well. I know you think about that a lot, and I think we're doing the best that we can with Mira, and our policies of what we can control inside the library, of course.
Before we thank our speakers, no.